April 1814. The supreme military architect of the globe steps onto a wooden dock. His new empire is a landmass exactly 220 kilometers in circumference. Total civilian population, 12,000. This is his designated quarantine zone. His name is Napoleon Bonaparte. Every reigning monarch, aristocratic official, and allied general across the European continent operates on a singular assumption. Bonaparte is permanently neutralized. He will decay on this isolated rock, deleted from history, finished. They are entirely incorrect. Exactly 292 days from this moment, Napoleon will occupy the capital in Paris. He will command the French state. How does a betrayed, globally exiled operative, equipped with a fragmented militia of just 700 men, reclaim the apex seat of European power? This is the operational blueprint. Elba, May 1814. Napoleon Bonaparte initiates his daily routine. He is contained on an island he can circumnavigate by horseback in under 2 hours. The commander who previously mobilized armies of 500,000 now audits local fishing skiffs. His base is a modest hillside villa. 0 gilded imperial corridors, just a cliffside structure locked behind an uncrossable aquatic barrier. The British military assigns a dedicated surveillance asset, Colonel Neil Campbell. His objective: ensure the asset remains contained. Campbell executes physical walkthroughs. He transmits status updates to London. He assesses the target as pacified. Napoleon tends to the soil. He rides. He reads. What the British colonel fails to document is the specific data the target consumes. Napoleon aggregates smuggled continental broadsheets. He processes encrypted mail from deep-cover loyalists. The intelligence confirms his primary hypothesis. King Louis XVIII is hemorrhaging stability. Combat veterans with 20 years of service are being systematically terminated. Pensions are nullified. Experienced officers are replaced by returning aristocrats who spent the revolutionary conflict sheltered in England. The French state is highly combustible. Napoleon tracks the metrics. He reconstructs the southern French coastal topography entirely from memory. He maps the royalist troop concentrations. He logs the geographic blind spots. He also analyzes his handler. Colonel Neil Campbell takes scheduled maritime excursions to the Italian mainland to visit a female contact, a mechanical, predictable vulnerability in the surveillance grid. February 26. Campbell boards a transport for the Italian coast, a routine absence. The operational window is 72 hours. Napoleon visually confirms the British vessel dropping behind the horizon. He turns to his chief of staff. We deploy tonight. A localized invasion of a sovereign state. 700 infantrymen initiating a hostile takeover against a standing national army of 200,000. Executed on a fleet of 7 civilian fishing vessels. February 26, 1815. Nightfall. The microfleet idles in the harbor of Porto Ferraio. The boarding protocol is absolute silence. 0 illumination. 700 Apex veterans load into the wooden hulls. Men who survived the kinetic grinders of Austerlitz and the Russian permafrost. Napoleon walks the timber docks. His biometrics are flat, calm. A subordinate officer breaks the silence. Emperor, what is the protocol if royalist infantry intercepts us at the landing zone? Napoleon maintains his stride. We resolve it at the landing zone. If their numbers are statistically superior, they will be superior. That is a mathematical absolute. The operational question is if they pull the trigger. Midnight. The flotilla detaches. Napoleon occupies the flagship, structurally modified and painted to mimic a British naval vessel. The fleet slides into the open ocean. Day 2 of transit. A French royalist frigate intersects their vector. If the royalist captain initiates a boarding sequence, the invasion terminates in the water. Napoleon issues a rapid command. All 700 personnel submerge below the waterline. He stands exposed on the bow in full imperial uniform. The royalist vessel slides parallel. The proximity allows for unamplified vocal transmission. Napoleon's hired captain leans over the timber rail. What is the status on Elba? The royalist commander shouts back. Routine. Bonaparte is secured. The vessels separate. March 1st, 1815. The 700 operatives make landfall on a southern French beach. They initiate a 1,100-kilometer forced march to the capital. The National Royalist Army mobilizes to crush the incursion. Why is Napoleon not evading? Why is he marching in a linear trajectory towards a defensive force 10 times his capacity? 6 days later, the psychological architecture of this decision executes. March 7th, 1815. Grenoble. Napoleon halts his column exactly 1 kilometer from a fully armed royalist regiment blocking the primary access road. He executes an action completely devoid of standard military doctrine. He walks forward, solo, unarmed, approaching a wall of loaded firearms. His lieutenants attempt a verbal intervention. Emperor, they are ordered to fire. Napoleon does not break his stride. We will verify that. He continues the approach, a solitary asset crossing the dead space. The royalist infantry tracks his movement, muskets leveled, thumbs resting on iron triggers. The commanding officer projects a continuous loop of instructions. Maintain your positions. Discharge on my command. The infantry remains static. A psychological fracture propagates through the ranks. These are French nationals, personnel who spent years executing Napoleon's continental strategies. 50 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters. He stops. He slowly reaches up and removes his bicorn hat. Soldiers of the 5th Regiment, if there is a man among you who wishes to execute his emperor, I am here. He pulls back the gray wool coat. He exposes his chest to the iron sights. Shoot. The line paralyzes. The commanding officer's orders are completely ignored. A single musket barrel drops toward the dirt. A second follows. A third. A vocal disruption erupts from the censor mass. Vive l'Empereur!
The defensive line disintegrates. The soldiers break formation and sprint toward the target. They swarm Napoleon, weeping, grabbing his uniform. The royalist blockade instantly converts into an insurgent vanguard. 0 casualties. Napoleon remains motionless, calm, validated. He utilized the 30-second behavioral override to hijack a national asset. By nightfall, the Grenoble garrison surrenders the keys. But a critical threat approaches. The Crown's apex tactical commander is mobilizing the largest standing force in the interior, Marshal Ney. Before departing the capital, Ney swore an oath to the sitting monarch. He guaranteed he would retrieve the exile in an iron cage. March 10th, Paris. King Louis XVIII activates his supreme commander in a packed royal hall. Marshal Ney, Bonaparte is advancing on the capital. I require you to intercept him. Ney locks his posture. He verbally commits. He promises to deploy south, locate the target, and extract him to Paris in an iron cage. Exact phrasing, iron cage. Ney marches south with 6,000 highly trained Crown loyalists. He has everything he needs to terminate the incursion in a single afternoon. March 14th, the distances close. Ney's forward scouts deliver data that contradicts the operational model. No kinetic friction. Garrisons are flipping allegiances en masse. Ney's own personnel begin intercepting physical mail from the opposition line. Come back to the fold. The emperor is online. Napoleon alters the parameters. He authors a handwritten document directly to Ney. It is not a formal surrender request. It is a highly personalized data packet between 2 operatives who survived 20 years of global conflict. That night, Ney processes the text in isolation inside his tent. The psychological code executes. At dawn, Ney assembles his 6,000 troops. He elevates the parchment. He vocalizes the text. Then he scans the faces of his infantry. He calculates the shared combat trauma. Soldiers, the cause of the Bourbons is lost forever. I myself am going to join him. 2 seconds of absolute silence. Then 6,000 men detonate in cheers. Hours later, Ney intercepts the insurgent column. He dismounts and approaches the target he promised to cage. Napoleon initiates physical contact. He embraces the marshal. My friend, you have arrived exactly when I required you. Ney registers no verbal response. An oath made 6 days prior is deleted. A 20-year operational bond overrides it. Napoleon's count hits 7,000 troops.
When the intelligence reaches Louis XVIII, the monarch of France abandons his own capital in the dead of night. Napoleon never pulled a trigger. March 20th, 1815. The seat of power sits vacant for precisely 6 hours before Napoleon breaches the city limits. Information cascades through the grid. By the time the convoy approaches the Tuileries Palace, human density stalls the carriages. It is a fanatic surge. Citizens swarm the transport. Inside the palace, Napoleon surveys the royal office, untouched for 11 months. 19 days, a 700-man beach landing transformed into a bloodless national coup. But the international network is flashing red. Every global power receives the ping. The coalition instantly mobilizes 700,000 troops, vectoring toward French borders from all coordinates. Napoleon isolates his only viable protocol, a preemptive strike.
125,000 French infantry facing an impossible 700,000-man aggregate threat. Two primary hostile forces occupy Belgium. The Duke of Wellington holds the western sector. Blücher commands the Prussian units in the east. The strategy? Drive a wedge between the elements. Decimate Blücher instantly. Pivot west. Annihilate Wellington before the Prussian recovery. 2 targets, 2 engagements, 48 hours. June 16, 1815. Ligny. 80,000 French strike 84,000 Prussians. 8 hours of intense kinetic exchange. At dusk, the Prussian line shatters. Phase 1 complete. Napoleon deploys Marshal Grouchy with 33,000 men to track Blücher and block his merge with Wellington. Napoleon pivots west. June 17th, the French army navigates torrential rainfall to reach Waterloo. Wellington is entrenched on a southern ridge. He is braced, waiting for Blücher's reinforcements. The entire geopolitical future hinges on Grouchy trapping Blücher. June 18th, 11:30 a.m. Napoleon pauses the offensive. The terrain is saturated. Heavy artillery sinks in the mud. He calculates a critical delay for solar drying. A micro-adjustment, a macro catastrophe. While the French wait, Blücher is already in transit, marching west, directly toward the ridge. Grouchy is executing a blind march through heavy timber, adhering to a literal interpretation of outdated orders. 12 p.m., the French assault begins. Wellington absorbs the impact. British squares repel cavalry shockwaves. Artillery exchanges pound the grid. By 3 p.m., Wellington's line bends but snaps back. Localized breaches are instantly plugged by hidden reserves. 4 p.m., Napoleon elevates his optics. A dust signature materializes on the eastern horizon. Black avian insignias on yellow fields. Prussians. Blücher. 30,000 fresh hostiles smash into the French right flank at the exact second the primary assault hits exhaustion. 20 kilometers away, Grouchy's lieutenants register the artillery concussions and request a vector shift. Grouchy denies it. He follows the paper. The window closes. Napoleon activates his final contingency, the Imperial Guard, the elite reserve that has never logged a defeat. They advance up the slope in rigid symmetry, the final kinetic output of the empire. Wellington stands in the stirrups. He drops his blade. A concentrated British volley shreds the vanguard. The guard stalls, takes a second volley. A systemic anomaly occurs. The Imperial Guard fractures. They turn. They run. When the wider French grid registers the guard fleeing, the psychological tether snaps. The organized retreat instantly degrades into a chaotic rout, a total collapse into the mud while Prussian cavalry slaughters the rear guard. Napoleon anchors on an elevation. He processes the dissolution of his empire. His security detail demands immediate extraction. He remains frozen, calculating the void. He turns his mount. He rides. The engagement consumed 8 hours. The machine that required 19 days to assemble without a shot was dismantled in an afternoon. June 22, 1815. Napoleon formally abdicates 96 hours post-Waterloo. Elba is no longer viable. The British select a maximum security coordinate, St. Helena, a volcanic anomaly in the South Atlantic, 2,000 kilometers from any landmass. He logs the final 6 years of his lifespan here. 0 tactical planning, 0 troop movements, just a 360-degree oceanic wall and a hillside structure where he verbally records his data logs to anyone remaining.